Hi, Joseph Craig here, and welcome to my storybook. Today, this is the part 5 of this book called The Whisper, The Rescue. Yesterday, I have read chapter 7 and chapter 8. Tonight, I'm going to be reading chapter 9 and chapter 10 of this book. Chapter 9. Emily stayed on the walk in the rain for a long time, lost in thought. I thought you might want this, a voice said. Emily looked up to see that her mother had come outside and was holding out her yellow sticker. No, thanks, she said. I'm okay. Normally, her mother would have told her to put it on anyway, but she just nodded and set the coat down on one of the other rocks. Your father just called, and he'll be back in a few minutes, she said. We don't have any breakfast. You don't have any breakfast. So I want you to try and eat a decent lunch, okay? She wasn't at all hungry, but Emily nodded. Her mother nodded, too, and climbed up effortlessly to sit next to her on the walk. The rain was still coming down pretty hard, and they both watched as a small lobster would clunker across the water, stopping every so often at a brightly marked boulder so that the man and the woman in the boat could shut their traps and set out a few new ones. Do you think it hurts? Emily asked. After a while, her mother shook her head. No, they're giving him medicine to help him sleep and to make sure he isn't in any pain. Did animals take things like aspirin or Tylenol, or did they have special medications? Since he had been having surgery, thought he might not even have a week left. For a second, it occurred to her that he might never wake up at all, but she wasn't going to let herself think about that. No matter what happens, her mother said, you did the right thing by trying to save him. I'm very proud of you. That was a nice compliment, and Emily nodded a little bit shyly. All I did was go outside. Well, her mother left me in our bar. According to your father, you did consistently more than that. Emily checked her expression to see how much trouble she might be in. Before instantly, I didn't plan it. It just, you know, happened. Her mother nodded. Dad was really mad at me, Emily said. No, your father was afraid you might get hurt. Her mother corrected her. There's a big difference. I have to jump, Emily said defensively. Are you going to yell at me about it too? Are you going to yell at me about it too? Actually, her parents almost never yell at anyone or about anything. Mostly, they like to be very calm and responsible and discuss things at length. Sometimes they have really, really long discussions, like for several hours. And once, during an enlightenment debate that had sounded a whole lot more like an actual argument, her father had even put have her father wait a minute her father had even put a Kenson timer on the table to force her mother to wind down a little bit more effectively. Not today, her mother said, but then she looked at her sharply. I know you're an inside swimmer, but that water can be very dangerous, especially during a thunderstorm. The currents will offer. so strong, and the part of the sound in front of their house was so deep that she went that when she wanted to go swimming, her parents drove down to the beach or took her over to the pools at the college. And if she was ever on a boat or any kind, she always wore a life jacket. So, from now on, I need for you to remember to be much more careful, her mother said. Emily nodded. Her parents worried a lot about her, and she didn't know if all parents were like that, or whether hers were particular instances. She kind of thought that because her parents had been a little bit older when they adopted her, they spent more time warning than her friends' parents did. Being an only child probably had a lot to do with it, too, out in the water. The people in the lobster boat had holding up another trap. Emily and her mother watched as the man and woman tossed back the lobsters that were too small, collecting, collecting the ones that were of a large size, and then rebating the trap and dropping it back into the sea. If it suffers to want them to keep trying, Emily asked. Her mother paused to think about that. Unlike her father, who always had definite opinions and rarely changed his mind, her mother's field was political science and constructional law, and so she was inclined to see both sides of everything. No, not at this point, she said finally. But even though I know it's awful, we're going to have to prepare ourselves. We're going to have to prepare ourselves for what we might have to do. Emily nodded, feeling an immediate lump in her throat. She had only been about six when their 17-year-old cat, Wumble, had to be put to sleep, and all she remembered was that her parents came home with an empty kettle, and that her mother had gone into her room and cried straight through dinner. It had been really sad, and after all, well, Emily had gone in there and cried, too. Emily had gone in there and cried, too, both of them clumbering under a thick quiet that sat there in the rain. He shouldn't have a name, Emily said quietly. Her mother glanced over. If something bad happens, he should have a name and know that people love him. Just seeing the words brought tears to her eyes, and Emily whipped them on her already very wet sleeve. Okay, her mother said, and put her arm around her. What's his name? Emily didn't even have to think. Zach. The name just felt right. Her mother looking a little surprised by how quickly she had come up with it. Just Zach. Zachary, Emily said. But Zach for the nickname. All right then, her mother said, and tightly her arm around her shoulders. Zach is it. Zach is it. Zach it is. When they saw her father pulling into the parking lot, Emily jumped down off the walk, landing upright in a puddle with a small splash. Her mother had brought back enough sandwiches, cups, and drinks for everyone who worked in the vet's office, too. Emily still wasn't at all hungry, but to keep her mother from looking so worried, she ate an egg and she had egg salad sandwiches and a little bag of potato chips and had some orange juice too. Then once all of the food and drinks were gone. It was back to waiting. The only news they had gotten at all was when Gary, one of the teats, came out and told them that the dog, Zach, was back in surgery. Other than that, they just waited. None of them talked of much, but she was glad that her parents were both there to keep her company. Every minute seems to last an hour, and every hour seems to last a century. The office officially closed for the day at 6 o'clock, but they were allowed to stay and keep waiting. It was just after 7 when Dr. Kazanowski came out of the back room. Even though he hadn't said anything yet, he was walking so slowly that Emily knew the answer before he even spoke. I'm very sorry, he said. I think it's time. Chapter 10. Emily knew that she had to be brave, but it was hard. If their vet was telling them it was time. So she just nodded and rubbing her hand across her eyes and pretending to listen while her parents and Dr. Kasanowski talked. She didn't really want to know the details. All that mattered was that they were going to have to put her dog to sleep. Can we see him? She asked. Of course. Dr. Kasanowski said, let me just go in the back for a minute, and then the three of us, and then the three of you can join me. When they were waiting, Emily cried a little, and her parents hugged her. They both looked close to tears, too. Lyndon, the other vet technicality, came out and motioned for them to follow her into a small examining room in the back. The lights had been turned low, and the dog was lying on his side on top of sun dipped towels on the melted exam explaining table. His eyes were closed, and he was hooking it up to IV and various other tubes. The first thing Emily noticed was that, for such a big dog, he looked very small now. He was covered with bandages and stitches, and there were lots of bald patches where his fur had been shaved. His skin was almost pink under the white fur, which surprised her. For some reason, there was also a large cast on his left front leg. Looking at him, Emily understood why their hard decision was the right one. The dog was frail and weak, and rarely seemed to be breathing at all. Dr. Kansanowski put his hand on her shoulder. I'm very sorry. He was just too badly hurt. Emily nodded. She wouldn't have said that she was crying, but she could feel tears running down her cheeks. Is he in pain? She asked. Dr. Kansanowski shook his head. No, I don't think he can really feel anything all now. He's just very, very tired. Someone, she wasn't sure who, handed her son cosmetic, and she wiped her eyes. So can I say goodbye? Of course, Dr. Kasanowski said. Why don't the three of you spend some time with him? Take as long as you need. With that, he and the two veterinarians left the room, closing the door behind them. Once they were by themselves, all three of them cried, and her parents took turns hugging her. I'm really sorry, her father said. I wish there was something I can say to help. Her mother gave her son more castanets, which Emily gratefully accepted. I know, she said. I just I was sure he was going to be okay. She had felt it. There really wasn't anything else to say, so they all just stood there next to the examination table. Could I be alone with him? Emily asked. Just, you know, for a minute. Her parents exchanged glances and then nodded. We'll be right outside if you need us, her mother said. Once they were gone, Emily looked miserable at the dog. He hadn't moved once in the entire time they had been in here. As awful it was to admit, he looked as though he was already gone. She had never really thought about life and death in a serious way, and when it all meant staring at the dog, staring at the dog, at that, she wondered if she knew she was there, or if he was too far away from them now. I named you, she said softly. That seemed dumb, but I thought you needed a name. I mean, I know you can't hear me, but I want you to know that you belong to someone. Now she was crying again, and it was hard to speak. That you wouldn't battle yourself, and that you were brave. She didn't know if she was allowed to touch him, but if she was careful, she was pretty sure that she wouldn't make things worse than they already were. She started to reach her hand out, but then hisses, will he feel cold and stuff? And were not alive. For a minute, she was afraid to find out, but almost as quickly, she was ashamed that she had even thought something like that. Her parents were right. None of this was about her. It was about the dog, about that. She walked around to the other side of the table so that she wouldn't be behind him. That way, she could pat his head with her right hand and drape her left arm over his chest and shoulder. It wouldn't it wouldn't quite be a hug, but it would be close. She bent over him, sliding her hand underneath his head, so it would be sober like a pillow. A pillow. You are such a good boy, she whispered into his ear. I'm really sorry I never got to do dog stuff. Really, I never did it. I'm really sorry I never got to do dog stuff with you. I can have throw sticks and tennis balls and give you food under the table when my parents weren't looking. And, well, anything you wanted. It felt almost as though he had moved a little, responding to her voice. But she knew that that was just wishful thinking. I would have taken really good care of you, that, she said. We would have gotten you the red bowl. Unless maybe he didn't like red, or maybe a blue bowl. A blue bowl would have been good. Not one of those, you know, stainless steel ones. She wanted to see if he might move, but he just lay down with his eyes closed. We would have gone for lots of walks, she said, all around town, and you get to riding in a car and stick your nose out the window and all of that good stuff. I would have been the best owner I could. No, that didn't sound right. I mean, I would have been the best friend I could be. She wondered then whether she had been in her too long and if her parents and Dr. Kasanowski were going to come in soon. You're so good, she whispered, and then hugged him as well as she could. being careful not to disallow any of the tools or baggages. I'll always remember you. Okay? That really was time. She gave him a small kiss on the head and then straightened it up. It would be too hard to look at him again, so she kept her head down as she went over to the door. As she started to turn the door knob, she thought she heard a sign behind her. It sounds like that. Anyway, but when she peeking back for a second, he was still lying in the same position. So it must have been her imagination. Then she heard the sound again, only this time it was clearly distinctly, unmistakably, and very small wolf. That will be the end of chapter that I have read chapter 9 and chapter 10 in this book. Tomorrow I will be reading chapter 11 and chapter 12 in this book called The Whisper, The Rescue. Until then, take care everyone, stay peaceful, and God bless.